Good evening to the Grafton Finance Committee June 4th meeting. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Grafton Finance Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who'd like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by visiting the Zoom link found on the Grafton Town website. I ask everybody to please mute themselves on their computer if they're not speaking. We'll take attendance to acknowledge everyone's here, can hear me and engage, and we will do a roll call vote for all votes. Questions and comments don't need to go through me. We'll use the process we've been using, and attendees, if you'd like to comment or question, you can use the Q&A feature. If Eric, you could just let me know if you see any Q&A. All right. So let's, if I had a gavel, I'd say let's get the meeting started. So let's do that.
We need a motion.
No.
So we're just, it's a regular meeting tonight.
Oops.
So
The roll call.
Roll call.
yes, roll call. Colleen,
Present.
Mr. Haddad,
Present.
Sue Robbins,
Present.
Sue Fiacco,
Present.
Barry,
Present.
Eric,
Present.
Dan,
Present.
and Heather.
Present.
And Austin is present as well. Excellent. All right, so we've got a few things to do, I think, tonight to move the dial on this process. I guess I'll just give the committee an update on kind of what happened today, which isn't a whole lot, but I'll tell you what did happen. So I reached out to Tim first thing in the morning and essentially with a text asking him if he could make our meeting tonight. And that finance committee had some concerns about using stabilization and wanted to talk to him and get his input on the budget. So he responded back to me asking if I had a list of the proposed reductions. And I said that I did. So I sent that over to him. That was about, I don't know, 10:30 in the morning or whatever. So when he got that, he asked a couple of questions. One was on the assistant town administrator, and also it basically said that he wouldn't support reduction in that particular position, and that he was questioning essentially what the thinking was around the insurance. So the insurance in particular, I think, is one that we have to nail down, and we have to make sure that we have the numbers correct on that if we're going to move forward with anything. So that's something for discussion tonight. He then asked, we did a couple of back and forth, and I just essentially just said that he really needs to engage with the committee. I don't want to represent the committee in discussions one-on-one with Tim. I think this issue and the budget process is important to get that engagement. And there he is. Hey, Tim.
Hi.
So Tim McInerney has just joined the meeting. Tim, are you on computer?
No.
You're not. Okay. Do you have the list of cuts that I sent you this morning?
No.
All right. Are you on email?
I can get email if I swipe up, I guess.
Okay. Are you on your phone? All right. Well, so as I said this morning, Tim, Finance Committee has some serious concerns about the use of one-time money to fund operational expenses, and in particular, stabilization. So the clear opinion of the committee from last night was to move forward with making some reductions and have a plan at town meeting to propose an alternate budget. So I wanted to, given that vote and the list of reductions, I really wanted to get your input on what you would do if essentially, if you were gonna cut 190K out of the budget so that we didn't have to use stabilization to balance the budget this year.
You want to know what I would do, or you want input on what you would do? Because you've already made a decision to cut 190.
We
in the
have,
list you sent me today.
but I personally would feel more comfortable if that list came from you, because ultimately you're the guy who's plugged into the day-to-day operations in town. And you have a good understanding, obviously, of what the service impacts are of any potential reduction. So I think it's critical if finance committee is going to come to make some cuts that we get input from you.
Okay, but you've already made those cuts. You voted on them last night.
We did? Yep.
Okay, so I made a recommendation. You have a separate recommendation. Now you want me to make another recommendation.
We can reconsider at any point, Tim. And it would be a better process going into town meeting if we had your input on making those cuts, rather than, we've gone through a process. We had a very thorough discussion last night, and the committee voted overwhelmingly in favor of the plan. But I feel that we should get your input and make sure that we're on the same page. So I know it's late in the budget process and we should have been having these discussions sooner. But because of everything that's happened, this is where we're at. So I want to do everything that I can to collaborate with you and make sure that going into town meeting, we have a good story and that we are on the same page.
All right, well, I can't offer you substitutions, but I can tell you it's problematic to cut health insurance by 25 grand.
Yeah, so I had some concerns about that too. So the idea was that we were cutting some positions and that we would free up some healthcare. So I don't know if those positions are using healthcare, but that was the basis for that reduction. So obviously that's a number that we would have to tighten up and make sure that's correct.
Okay, and you're adding staff in the school department, 3 positions, correct?
We're reducing staff and we're adding staff. There's a net loss in 2 positions, as I understand it. But we're not touching, the finance committee proposal isn't touching that piece.
Touching what piece? I'm sorry.
The school side of the budget.
Oh yeah, I know, because the 617, 599 post-COVID, they were asked to come up with 52,000. We came up with 550.
Yep.
Or 500. So I don't know. The ATA position to reduce, I think you're going to have some significant shortfalls in service of the things that we provide above and beyond the day-to-day stuff, the quality of work, everything from managing programs from trash bags to electric aggregation. That no short order, that program in 4 years has saved taxpayers, you and I who live here, cumulatively $2 million and businesses $200,000. So those types of things don't happen, or if they do, they're very, very long to get to the street, so to speak.
Yep.
So as much as I try to give everybody credit for everything we do, it comes down to 2 people that manages all those things in between. So I think it's short-sighted for us to eliminate that. And I will tell you, historically, we had a DPW director that made in excess of 100 grand. We had a town engineer that made like 90,000. And with benefits back in 2009 or 10, we didn't fill the engineer position and we did not hire a DPW director. That ultimately became my responsibility under the charter. Saved us $218,000, if I remember correctly. The board at the time, from an older proposal from a former town administrator, talked about an assistant, and we used those savings, the 218, to hire an assistant, and that was the goal, to get all those added extracurricular things that we do in terms of value add to government. So it's not like we just kept adding and adding. Because
Sure.
your email was like, oh, we got to find ways to reduce those fixed costs from growth. And I just asked you to look at the history of the budget as a whole for municipal services. They've contracted every year. The trash program, incidentally, in 2008 was $916,000. 11-year projection, it's still right around 730. So those things to be managed effectively, you need bodies, you need competent professionals.
Sure. So that's why we're getting your input on these service impacts. So from our standpoint, we have a couple of options, right? We have an override on the table. The plan for the override is very clearly to plug the gap that resulted from COVID. So Finance Committee feels like that's not what we voted on, and that's not what was being represented in the discussions with the override. So that's just problematic for us. And the other thing that we're not happy with is, again, using these one-time revenues to fund operations. So we have the articles, we've moved out a bunch of public safety equipment and funded that with free cash, and we have stabilization paying for operations. And we're just not comfortable with that, given all of the risk that we're facing next year. We feel like if we don't get an override, that there's really no like substantial service impacts on the town side. And that's problematic for us. And it puts us in a situation where if the plan is to go for an override later, we haven't made any operational reductions. So the amount for the override is going to be bigger, because all of those needs, we have to claw back from stabilization to payback, from free cash. It's just not a good plan. So if the town votes to not do an override, an operational override, we should be making cuts, real cuts, not transfer to free cash. And that is what the committee expressed very clearly last night. So if anybody else on the committee wants to chime in, that is kind of my summary of the discussion last night. So we made some decisions based on our best knowledge of things and the history of the budget, because we have a lot of experience in this team on this budget and a lot of history with it. So that's what we did. But there also, once we made that vote, there was a very good discussion around, let's make sure that we check in with Tim and give him a good opportunity to provide some input and help us understand that, look, this isn't anything that we want to do, Tim, but we've got to make some difficult decisions to support a good budget process. And we just don't feel like this is a good strategy for the budget. You talked about it being short-term. I think the short-term approach is to move things out to free cash and stabilization, because we've got to think about next year. I don't know what
without
we're
a
going to
doubt.
do if it fails. What if it fails and we see, as everybody in the Commonwealth is expecting, additional cuts from the state and federal government, and we don't get some miracle stimulus?
Yeah, I mean, we're making decisions with incomplete information, right? We're going to town meeting, as we do every year, not knowing about $12 million of a $60 million budget, right? So state aid is never solidified until after town meeting. So we could go to town meeting now, having the governor's number in hand, that's the number we're using, and then find out we've cut 10%, worst case, whatever, 20%, whatever the number is. $1 million, $1.2 million. And what I would do is I would look to your financial policies to talk about what you do in that instance. And what you do in that instance is you use one-time money to get you through, so you don't have a catastrophic failure of systems. That's what you do for fiscal 21, if that were to happen.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Can we avoid saying things like, well, every year we go into town meeting not knowing about the state aid, because this year
that's a true statement. That's a true statement.
No, it's a misrepresentation of what's happening this year. This year it's different. There is way more uncertainty this year than there are in normal years. To say that every year we go into town meeting with this uncertainty, that's not true. It's not the same uncertainty.
Okay, well, what's the uncertainty? What more uncertainty do you have?
COVID.
All right, so what's more uncertain about not knowing a number? You don't know the number now, do you?
Right now. This is.
No, I'm not. I'm
is
asking
not
a
in
question.
good faith.
I'm asking a question. You're not in good faith. Listen, you had a meeting last night, made a decision, then came to me the next day and said, we want your input. If that's not the most full of shit thing I've ever heard, I don't know what I heard. That is craziness. So I'll tell you this.
Hold on.
That-
I'm the one that made the proposal last. So if you got a problem with what.
Who's this? Who's speaking? I'm
It's
sorry.
Mark Haddad. It's Mark Haddad. that's
Oh,
speaking.
thank you, Mark. I appreciate knowing who's talking.
Yeah, well.
So
thank
you made the proposal and everybody supported it. That's great.
Well, let me
that's-
tell you
that's
why
the
I made, let
proposal.
me tell you why I made the proposal.
It's not important to me, the reason why, Mark, to be
Well,
honest
it's
with
important to
you.
me to tell you what the reason is.
Okay,
Okay,
well,
so why don't you
go
show a
ahead.
little, calm down. Let's have
I'm
a
calm.
conversation. Let's
Go
talk
ahead.
about it. No, you're not being calm.
Get to the point, please.
The point is I don't trust the numbers that you have put forward in your estimated receipts. I don't trust the numbers that you put forward in the governor's numbers. Everyone is telling us not to use the governor's numbers. Every legislator that I've spoken to in the last month has said, don't use the governor's numbers. They're not going to be accurate. You're coming into the meeting, you're coming into town meeting using the governor's numbers against the recommendation of all state legislators that I have spoken to. So I was concerned about that. You're also using one-time revenues out of the stabilization fund of $190,000 to balance the budget. I don't think you should go into town meeting with those types of estimates and those types of numbers when we will probably get worse numbers coming in over the summer. And that's when we'll really need to use our stabilization fund and our free cash to balance the budget. So my proposal last night to the finance committee was, I don't think we should use $190,000 in stabilization money. So then the question is, well, what are you going to do about that? My response was, well, let's make some recommended cuts to get it out of there and see what happens. And then from there, you're here tonight. It would be nice, Tim, if during the budget process and during the time that the finance committee is meeting, if the town administrator attended every single meeting of the finance committee, so we don't have to guess about numbers, so that we can have a conversation. If we didn't take the action that we did last night, I don't think you'd be here tonight. So maybe it was a ploy to get you to come and to work cooperatively with the finance committee for the first time in the 3 years that I've been on the finance committee. It's nice to
Oh,
have you
so
here
now,
tonight.
so
I
now,
want to
now
work
you're
with
telling
you.
me.
I want to try to get through this budget process. I want to try to work with you cooperatively to try to figure out how to do this. We should be having these very difficult conversations on how revenue estimates have been brought up, why we shouldn't use one-time revenues to fund operating expenses, and to plan for the worst going into the summer. We could see a 20% reduction in state aid. We could see building permit numbers and everything else down. Let's have that conversation.
Okay, so you would estimate all of those to be low, and you would still want to fund the requested amount from the school department, but not from any other department. Is that a baseline? It's school sacrosanct, right? So we won't. That's not on the table.
Oh, that's not true. Everything should be on the table.
Okay, so
You're putting
minimum.
$214,000 or $267,000 in the contingent budget for the school. Hey, Susan, can you put up the contingent budget on the screen? Is that possible to share that, Matt, so we can have this conversation right now?
I can, but Tim's not gonna see it because he's on a phone.
Oh,
But yeah, so Tim, all of the cuts that are being proposed would be returned in the contingent budget. So if we pass the override, what we're saying is we want to support all of the positions and level service, and we feel like that is in the spirit of the original discussion for the override.
All right, that's not what you said 5 minutes ago. You said it was disingenuous to add those things back if the override would have passed. That wasn't part of the package. So the 617 that we reduced and or funded with other and other places, you didn't want to add those things back. At least that's what I heard you say.
is it possible to email the memo that I drafted to Tim?
Sue, can you do that?
I think the misunderstanding here, Tim, is between some of the things you had on there, which on the personnel side were primarily the extra salary increases. Those we do not want to put back in. Where Mark made some suggestions that he thought on an initial run through could add up to the 190 that we would like to take out of the budget because we don't want to fund it from stabilization. Those positions that he has proposed as possibilities for elimination could be put back in and would be put back in should the override pass. So that it's not like, okay, we're just going to take everything you had initially proposed for contingent to put back in. We had some ideas on things that we thought were more in keeping with the spirit of what the override was for. And that would include making the town whole in terms of those positions for level services, or in some cases increase, but mostly for level. I think that's where a slight misunderstanding is in terms of that list.
All right, well, let me just try to unpack some of this, because Mark had a couple good points relative to not knowing what state aid will be. So we're having town meeting prior to knowing a lot of information. So we're going to try to apply the best case scenario. You could make reductions that could be hurtful across all departments to make the budget balance, not knowing, and even eliminate or curb all services. And then if it doesn't come to fruition, you got to rebuild those things. So that's problematic. So it begs the question of the timing of town meeting, right? If we could wait to see if we're going to get only 9 million versus 12.5, is that a better situation for us?
Go ahead, Mark.
You have to go into town meeting with a budget. You want to have the town meeting, if at all possible, before June 30th to pass the budget. Although I'm sure you've probably filed your 1/12 budget with the Director of Accounts in the event that town meeting doesn't happen, right?
I have not. It's being voted by the board next week.
Oh, yeah, it has to be approved by the board before you can do it. So I'm sure you're gonna submit that. So if town meeting doesn't happen, you're into the 1/12. Having a town meeting in July or August, you're still probably not gonna know what the state's gonna do, because they have no idea what they're gonna do. So having town meeting now, I think is having it now or having it July or August, I don't think is gonna change anything. The concern that we had going into the budget is you're already using those one-time revenues to balance a budget. And the thought process here was, if the override doesn't pass, right, you're gonna be using those one-time revenues. And then if the state reduces revenues even further, now we're really into a problem with the with the way we balance the budget and the way we operate. So it seemed to me anyway, and why I made the proposal I made last night was, let's eliminate the use of one-time revenues in the balanced budget, shift those to the contingent budget, hope the override passes so that they get restored, and then have our one-time revenues, either free cash or the stabilization fund, to bridge the gap to get us until the economy rebounds, hopefully sometime spring, and we're able to deal with issues moving forward. So that was the thought process into why I presented what I did last night. And I hope you have a copy of the memo to understand where I was coming from relative to the proposal. And if you look at some of the contingent budget numbers that the finance committee that we would like to recommend to town meeting moving forward, we'd like to put the reserve fund back up $25,000, because it seems to me you're probably going to need that reserve fund going into year since budgets are so tight. Put in the police department cruisers and their other equipment that's needed. The fire department equipment that's definitely needed. The fire department 2 deputy chiefs, because my understanding is you already have the fire chief in that, so you want to put the deputy chief in there. Try to restore the $267,000 to the school department, and then put back in the 5 cuts I proposed last night, which was the $4,000 in personnel in the selectman's office, the ATA, the human resource increase of $20,000, the assistant town clerk. And the reason I came up with the group health insurance, I assumed that the positions had health insurance, and therefore you wouldn't need the money. Now, if that's not the case, then Matt's right, we need to address that. But the point is put us in the best possible position to deal with any potential future revenue shortfalls that may come up. Now, there is a good opportunity here. Grafton has $1.6 million set aside in the coronavirus, the CARES Act fund. And there is a chance, and there is a possibility that they'll change the rules, and they'll be able and allow towns to use that towards revenue shortfalls. And if that's the case, that puts us in an even better position moving forward. But we don't know all that stuff. So
yeah, that's never going to happen. That we're never going to get that.
Well, you don't know. There is conversation right now that that's a possibility. Sometimes you hope you pray for the best, expect the worst, and pray for the best, right? But
Yeah,
the
yeah,
point
certainly,
is let's
but-
put us in the best possible position to go into fiscal 21 and have our reserves full and don't use any reserves this early in the process. I think that's the point that we discussed at length last night. And that's why the finance committee supported reducing $190,000. Now, I went through the budget, I came up with proposed cuts. And I think what we wanted to do was sit down with you and say, well, Tim, here's 190. If that doesn't work, those particular line items don't work. Are there other areas that you have that makes, because the last thing the finance committee wants to do is go into a town meeting arguing with the administrator.
Exactly.
Don't want to do it. Do not want to
look,
do that.
And go ahead, Colleen.
And just to piggyback on what Mark is saying, and one of those places to possibly look in the budget is what happened in recreation, where they had the reduction in personnel, but an increase in expenses. Is any of that money there could be used to offset our stabilization, the use of stabilization, and help reduce the cuts further because we use that instead. Is that possible at all, Tim?
I don't know, I got three different people giving me many different ideas relative to the situation, and I never have a chance to respond to them and unpack them in a organized fashion. So, Mark, what I'd like to ask is to see the memo, because I'm confused by the contingent budget comes after the balanced budget that gets voted. So you have Article 5 that'll be balanced. So your proposal is to take what's balanced now and reduce the line items 2,000 from TA, 92 from ATA, health insurance, and then town clerk 42,000. So that comes to 192. So you would reduce those things, and that's how you balance the budget and not use any stabilization.
That's the point. Yeah,
Correct.
let's
All right,
say
hold
the
on, hold on.
stabilization.
Okay, hold on.
Yep.
Then I go to contingent budget.
Yep.
And now I vote to increase the 192 plus the 617 in total. So I get, instead of being 818 of the override, I use, I don't know, 1,050,000.
Nope. No.
What do you
no,
use?
no.
What's that number?
So what the number that I would propose that you use out of for the contingent budget is $909,121.
And you would include police cruisers in there.
We added the police cruisers back into it because you took those out and, and
Well,
It
there's
just
two
seems-
two reasons for the takeout. Do you know what the two reasons are, Mark?
why don't you tell me?
They're not needed.
Okay, then cut that back. I was told they were needed.
No, there's a goal to do a replacement, but when you're in a financial stress, if you're not going to spend more than 7,000 on replacement of parts and fixing cars, there's really no need, because it's not too much of a burden on the operating budget to do that when you're faced with a $50,000 purchase of an automobile. So we'll never be, for the cars we have rolling stock, I'm not spending $7,500 a year just to keep them on the road.
All right, so,
know, my
so
gen-
then
gen-
that number drops down to 800 and something.
Okay.
I thought it
So-
made sense to put the cruises back into the budget because every year since I've been on the FinCom, they've been out, they've been in. You've put them into free cash one year, you had them in the operating budget one year. They seem to be a moving target. So my thought process was it probably makes sense to replace 2 cruises every year. So if we have the opportunity to do that, let's do it. But if you say it's not needed, fine.
Well, yeah, but need is a relative term, right? I mean, we have to manage the environment that we're in.
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to do. So we have very incomplete information about state aid, and to make reductions that you've proposed that just don't work. They just will not work.
I
So-
don't understand what you're saying. What won't work?
Well, they could work.
Well,
But-
yeah, I mean, if town meeting wants to allocate money the way you presented, yeah, it will work. It'll have to work.
Yep. So look, I thought about how I would manage my budget, right? And I would maybe do something a little bit different than what we voted on last night. And so I thought, let's reach out to Tim and see how he would do it. Because ultimately it would be better if you made decisions, if somebody came to you and said, you've got to cut 190, for you to tell us, instead of us going to town meeting and us having that discussion there.
I don't know. I mean, what's minimum net school spending? What's that number compared to what we allocate right now?
So I have asked that question to Dan Gale, and I don't have the answer to that. I'll have that over the next couple of days. I'm still confused about the hold harmless number and minimum aid and all that. And so we need to get some clarity on that because it's a very important piece. I will tell you that Mendon Upton gave notice to 25 of their staff in their school system, and they are a minimal aid district as well. So I think all of the towns in the municipality are all making fairly aggressive cuts, and a lot of it is in the schools. But Grafton needs to recognize that COVID's happened and we need to accommodate for it. And I think we do need to plan for something much less than level aid for next year. Because even in our meeting with Dave Meridian, he said from a budgetary standpoint, we should be planning for level or cuts. That was his directive with us. And
Okay.
that was back in March.
Yeah, and I asked them Monday and they said, we just don't know. It could be $4 to $6 billion out of their coffers that they won't have next year. What that relates to for us, I don't know. It doesn't translate to state aid very well because you just don't know what the state priority will be. But there is a foundation budget that they need to meet that we contribute to. So knowing that we're over the minimum net school spending amount, you hate to go to that number because it's significantly lower than the 36 million they're at now. But you got to look at that number because there's been $10 million worth of growth in 6 years in the school department. That's fairly significant. And I've done my best, and you can look at the number right now for the contingent to look at 617 of a reduction in revenue and find 52,000 or ask the school to only give up 52. I think that's amazing.
But again, in the contingency budget, we are giving back raises above 2%. And just as an example, that's not what we need to be doing now. That's not the kind of fiscal constraint that we need in FY21. We shouldn't be planning that. If we get an override, we're going to get everybody back to where they were pre-COVID. It's just a poor strategy, and it's a bad message to the town.
So wait a minute, you just said that you would give more than 2% if it passed. I'm confused by what you say.
No, everybody's leveled at 2%. We would not support anything above 2%, but we would support public safety and education. So that's
okay. So the difference between the 2% and the increases in other people's salaries that are over 2% is $17,000.
It's modest.
Yeah. So all right. So we take that off the table. Where do you get to the 92? You just get to it because you made all those reductions that Mark recommended?
Wait, we're talking about two different things.
Well, I'm trying to get to the 2%, right? Are we in
the contingency budget?
Yeah.
We would like to fund public safety, education, and the reserve fund, as well as all of the positions that were cut out of the 190.
Okay. But to the fire department.
Yep.
I don't know. I've hired a couple fire chiefs, couple police chiefs, assessment centers, that type of stuff. Takes a long time to onboard 3 people of white shirt status in a department in 1 year is nearly impossible because it'd be a full-time job. So to be realistic about the public safety component and just saying we're going to have 3 white shirts in the fire department in 21 is not realistic. Can't be done. That's why they're not in the budget as a proposal because you can't do it.
So
Unless that's all you do for a year, but you got to let the chief get on board, make an assessment for him or herself, and then start to hire the people he needs and trusts. That decision shouldn't be made by me. I should pick that person as the appointing authority and let him run the department and not pick his people ahead of him. So there's 2 pieces there. So the second piece of public safety for fire, you don't need in 21.
So I think we need some, and I don't know how much we need, but I think finance committee is open to that discussion. The current chief is saying that we need to do something about the inspector. So we need to bring in that second body because Steve is going to retire. He's not able to really do the job adequately right now. And we need to do something else. So maybe it's 2 positions and not 3. I think finance committee could have that discussion, but the fire study committee and Ray as their spokesperson spoke quite passionately about it a couple of times this year.
Sure.
And finance committee is moved by that.
That was going to be my question, Matt. you know, Ray Mead has said on several occasions that they need to do that entire thing next year. And now, Tim, you're telling me it's impossible to hire 3 people in a year? That's a
You-
full-time job to hire 3 people?
Do you ever hire a fire chief, Mark?
Yes, Tim, I've hired 3 fire chiefs in my 35-year municipal
Okay.
government career.
For a call department to transition to a full-time chief, do you think that you can hire 2 captains and 1 chief in 1 year?
Yeah, I think you can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
In what order?
Well, you hire the chief right away.
Okay.
Start that
All right.
process, get the chief on board, and then the chief
Okay.
comes on board, and then maybe
right,
within
hold
6
on,
months, he
hold on.
hires 2 more.
One thing at a time.
Yep.
How long does that process take to hire that chief?
I hired a fire chief 4 years ago from start to finish with an assessment center, a recruitment process, interviews, negotiating a contract. I had him on board in 3 months.
Okay, 3 months. So July 1 comes, so now we're in September.
Yep.
Barring he doesn't have any other employment obligation, so just pick September 1.
Yep.
So right after he starts, the first thing, when I have a department that needs attention, he's gonna focus his attention for the next, 3 or 6 months on hiring 2 more people.
Tim, let me ask you a question, if I may, with all due respect.
Sure.
You don't think a chief can multitask by putting an advertisement out, doing interviews, and then dealing with all the other stuff he has to do? You're saying that his sole 40 hours a week is going to be on a hiring process? Because I would fire him if that's what he's telling.
Okay.
I think you're hiring a professional chief. There's no reason why that chief can't do a hiring process while he's managing the day-to-day operations. Are you telling me, Tim, you've hired 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 department heads over the last year that you've had to fill some vacancies that you've had. Are you telling me that your sole focus was hiring those positions and not managing the town and doing your day-to-day operations?
The
I
fire
find it hard
department,
to believe that it's a full-time position, a full-time job hiring 2 people.
All right.
I don't buy that.
Let's
Sorry.
take a little step back here. So I think in my opinion, we need to trust the fire study committee. That's why we put them in place. That's their role. That's their is to do those recommendations, and the town should be supporting those recommendations is kind of my opinion. That's why we put them in place rather than making the decisions ourselves, because they.
well, we support them, but the charter still has an appointment authority provision, and that process needs to be followed. And I'm just realistic in terms of timing of hiring people, especially when you have a volunteer, fragile department that comes to calls, and that there's loyalty issues amongst 3 different stations, if you will, that we need to be cognizant of. This isn't just, let's just ram it home, because I'm going to alienate people if we just ram it home. And at 2 a.m, when those tollings go off, those 30% of those guys that might be loyal to 1 or 2 people aren't showing up. So you don't know.
I would say
Well, you
that's an
don't know.
argument to do it more aggressively. Get it in place sooner. And that allows you to be in a better place to make that transition, to create those relationships. I don't think anybody's talking about ramming it through. It's just, we're running out of time, and, the input from the committee is to get going on it.
And we are, but I
And that's
want
what the
you to,
override is for. That's what we talked about in March, Tim, that the 418 was in there to be able to hire those positions. And I don't know why we agreed in March on that. And for that part of it, I don't see what's changed between then and now.
well, the reality of a process to hire someone and keep people, because those guys who work 40 hours a week that are full-time aren't here at 2 a.m. And if you alienate that call department because you do this fragmented approach, it's going to be a problem. I'm just telling you how it is on the ground. You don't have to believe me, but I'm going to tell you there's going to be problems. So we need to we're moving. I have the position profile done. I have a contract with an assessment center ready to go. I can place the ad tomorrow. We can get the chief in place. But
So
that's the
that's
first step.
great, but why would you not give him the budget to hire the people that he needs on day one? I mean, if that was me coming in, interviewing in Grafton, I would want to know that I've got budget to bring people in as soon as I get in place.
Wait a minute. We don't know if we have the budget. right? Because A, it's contingent on override and it's contingent upon what we don't know state aid to be. So we can't pretend we have something we already admitted to everybody we don't know anything about.
But we'll know about the override a few days after town meeting.
That's right. That's right.
So that's not an issue of uncertainty when it comes to interviewing fire chief candidates.
No, because hopefully I have the grant in place and that money in place. You're right.
So Tim, maybe one way that we could approach this is we've got a Saturday meeting. If you want to think about it and think about what you would do if the select board came and said, we want you to cut 190, how would you do it? Because I would feel more comfortable with that approach.
That's okay, but you do understand that the select board, the executive board has not asked me to do that.
I do, but I really don't want process to get in the way of progress here. We really just want to go to town meeting with a level of comfort that you've considered this and that we've engaged with you so that it's not a disconnected process that we're doing, because we're talking about positions here.
May I ask, oh, Colleen.
Go ahead, Colleen.
All right, I just wanted to go back to the question I'd asked previously for Tim, the recreation money that the personnel flipped to expense, is that possible to be used to help reduce the amount of stabilization we're gonna use? Instead of using them.
If we don't open the beach and we don't run programs, those costs, if you don't want to put them towards ADA projects for the recreation department to administer during this process, certainly you can use those and move those into other line items.
Well, I mean,
That
we
doesn't come
don't
from the
have the
revolving
money
fund?
to do that, it sounds like. So I
Wait a
think
minute,
that those projects, sorry, Mark.
One at a time, please.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, those projects sound great and I'm all for them, but we're using one-time money to balance the budget. So I think those projects kind of have to get pushed off like they've been pushed off for a while now. I don't think now is the time to jump into them when we're using stabilization money. I think we should put that towards the amount of stabilization we'd be using. Do you agree or?
Yeah, it sounds reasonable, Colleen, I'll tell you that, but you know we needed to get these things down. We found an opportunity to have someone manage those projects that's working. We want to keep them busy and do things that enhance those programmatic activities and the ADA issues that are in the ADA transition plan. So we thought of it as an opportunity to be creative. Can you do it the other way? You certainly could. It's not my proposal, but you could do it.
Go ahead, Mark.
So the recreation budget isn't 100% revolving fund?
No, general fund supplements the beach.
How much?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
I thought, I was always under the assumption that the revolving fund funded 100% of the recreation operation. So that's good. That frees up some money.
Wait a minute, how does it free up money? If it's
Well, what
not
I'm saying is
fully
it-
funded by revolving account and use general fund, it doesn't free up
I
money.
don't know what Colleen's question was, if money that you weren't going to use on the beach, you were going to use to do some special project, can that be used to fund operational expenses to offset the 190,000? You just said yes.
Yes.
That was okay. That to me is
Yeah.
good news.
On the other side of it, you lose revenue too, but you don't lose as much because you would lose 30 if you open the beach and it was beautiful and no COVID. You open the beach and there's COVID, you probably lose 70 because they still have the same cost structure, but don't have the revenue to offset.
Understood.
Yep. So I feel like at this point, we've had a good discussion, but to me, it makes more sense, Tim, if we can get you looking at the document so we can all actually look at concrete numbers together and work through a proposed option for this.
All right, so it's in Mark's memo to you, which you'll send to me.
Yeah, Sue's got it. I think she sent it to you already, so it should be in your email.
Okay.
So can you meet with us on Saturday? And that'll give you some time to think about it and to do some kind of budget strategy, because I think that would make sense for us to kind of work together on this.
Saturday, this coming.
Yep, 11:30.
I don't know. I'll let me read the memo and I'll let you know what I think.
Okay,
Can I ask Tim one question?
go ahead,
before he
Mark.
goes? You said that the executive board hasn't asked you to reduce the use of stabilization fund. But the way the charter is written, the budget that goes to town meeting is the town administrator's budget. You're the one that presents the budget to town meeting. It seems to me that you can take the initiative to go to the executive board and say to them, hey, you know, I'm not comfortable using $190,000 in one-time revenue, given all this uncertainty. So maybe we should consider, you know, not doing that. And here's a way to do that. I think the select board would probably welcome that discussion. They don't have to direct you. It's your budget that goes to town meeting. You know, the finance committee has the right to amend it first before anybody else does, but it's your budget to go. So just because the executive board isn't asking you to do it, seems to me you still have the opportunity, working with the finance committee, to come up with alternative means, and that's all we're asking.
Yeah, I presented options to the board relative to the contingent budget and so forth, and you know, they took votes to keep it the way it was. It wasn't unanimous, but I made a proposal, Mark. I'm not going to negotiate with myself or make my second
I'm not asking you
best
to do that.
situation.
Yeah, I'm not asking-
You're asking me to reconsider using 190 of stabilization to balance
That's
the budget.
exactly what the
That's what
finance
you're
committee is
asking me
doing.
to do.
That's
Okay.
exactly what the finance committee is doing.
And I'll commit to you. I'll read your memo and I'll respond accordingly. If I agree and think we should do that, then we'll have further discussion. If not, we'll just do what we're doing now, and we'll go to town meeting, and you can do whatever you need to do to make your point. But let me read it. Let me take the time to digest it, and then I can make a decision.
Okay. Thanks, Tim.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Discussion.
I hope that he comes back and meets with us Saturday. I hope he comes and at least says, okay, I understand where the finance committee's coming from. And it would make sense to try to eliminate that 190. The biggest concerns that I have moving forward is the use of that one-time revenue when you're going into a situation where I think our revenues are going to tank.
Right.
And so I hope he does. You know, I'm glad he came tonight. I'm glad we talked to him. I thought it was good. Hopefully he'll try to work with us.
That's how we do it.
So I tried to, in the spirit of what Mark had written, on a number of things there, I tried to go back into the big budget book and identify other positions aside from the ATA that might be cuttable or reducible. I didn't get very far, but I get this impression that if the level of service or the number of service opportunities have gone down, if that's true, then the number of people performing that service would also go down. So if that's the case, then the assistant who, and pick the department, I hate to say, would be a target for reduction. And that would be cutting on the service side, the staff side. But I didn't get very far in trying to add up numbers and subtract numbers. And I'm not going to truck in rumors about how busy any one office is, because we've all heard that before, and that's a dead end for any conversations. But there you go.
Okay. So how do we move forward with this? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was going to say, I want to ask the finance committee, and I'd like to hear from each and every one of you. Do you agree with the position that we should not use one-time revenues at this time to balance the budget?
Everybody raise their hands that agrees with that. All right,
Okay.
unanimous. So our
Okay.
straw poll says yes, Mark.
Okay, so that's, now that we've had that, the second question is, do we move forward with reductions in the operational budget, whether it be the town or the school side? I gave you a list of 5 things that I recommended. You voted for those last night. You can vote to reconsider them. Do you agree that we need to make those cuts in order to balance the budget that goes to town meeting on June 20th? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page still.
You mean the cuts that you listed?
No, just any cuts.
Any cuts? That we
So,
reduce the budget by $190,000.
all right, Sue Robbins was first.
I would agree. I just raised my hand.
Yeah, I thought we were just doing straw poll.
Yeah, I thought we were.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh, I'm sorry, say it again because I missed
That's
it.
why everybody's hand went up so quick.
Okay, let me clarify that. Do we agree that we need to make $190,000 of reductions, whether it's Mark Haddad's proposal or if Tim McInerney comes back with $190,000 worth of proposals? Do we agree that we want to do that going into town meeting? Okay. So I think we made a lot of progress tonight in the conversation with the town administrator. It's the first time we've had that kind of conversation with the town administrator in the 3 years I've been on the finance committee. I didn't appreciate him swearing at us, but I do appreciate the fact that he talked to us and that we had that conversation.
And he's not the only one recently who's, said something in a meeting. So to be
That's
fair.
true. So yeah, look, that was, I guess, good progress. But also what we've seen in the past, on occasion is I'm gonna tell you guys what you want to hear and then we'll get off the meeting and then we'll see what happens. So hopefully we have, yeah, some additional collaboration on this.
I hope so. I'm glad he came tonight. I think that's great that he was here.
I would like to see though, some additional discussion around, so somebody mentioned the salaries above zero. Right, so I thought a lot about last night and today about how would I, if I were asked, and this has happened to me a couple of times, right? Matt, you gotta cut your budget by 15% or 25% was one. And what I always did was I tried to save positions first. And so some of the things we talked about tonight, rec, to me, that is a complete no-brainer. Like, just don't do those projects and don't use that money. Don't spend the money. That's a no-brainer. Raises. We could just ask, I don't know how much money that is, but we can find that number out. And so instead of getting rid of positions, and maybe we save one position, I don't know, but that's why we need Tim, is we need to be having that discussion to come with some reasonable accommodation for this. Cause actually 190 in a budget this size, it's not massive. It really isn't.
Well, the problem though is there's already been $600,000 more worth of reductions in that budget. So you're compounding a problem that you're having. So he's already reduced it 600 because of COVID. And now we're saying cut it another 192,000.
Sure, go ahead. Dan.
And that's after several years of tightening and tightening and tightening.
Yep. Yeah, I get it. But it's 190 grand. Go ahead, Colleen.
I have the number for raises. I actually asked him that recently and I just emailed it to Sue and yourself if you guys wanted to share it and see what he wrote for his response.
All right. Let's see. Thank
What are
you.
we looking for?
I got it. I'll put it up on screen. So. Here we go. All right. So that's the, yeah,
You want the net school spending number? I have it.
hang on a sec. So. Yeah. So that's the number.
I'm not getting anything.
You're not, okay.
I could see it.
I see it.
I see it.
I can see it.
Sorry, Barry.
All
Want
right,
me to read it to you?
so non-union, so non-represented labor at 0% and cut EDC saves 129. Non-union, 0% school Jan budget document, no new I'm not sure what that second thing is.
Mid-January budget document.
If
So
you don't give
I think that's
to
the town
non-union-
side versus the school side is
Yeah.
my guess of where he got that 300,000 is total. Municipal
see.
versus,
Got it. So that's 300,000 right there if we were to do salary freezes. So no positions. And that's what I'm talking about. Like that's where I have such difficulty with cutting positions. If we can give people, and this is what they've done at my work, right? You do the least impactful thing on people that you can. And so, they offered people sabbaticals and then they lopped off our, bonuses, and then they asked people to take all their vacation. And so it was this stepwise process. Anyways, so that's the number for that.
What is the net on the recreation, like the lake not opening? Like when you factor in
I don't
savings
think,
versus lost revenue, like
I
what's
don't
the
think
net?
we know. I really,
Ballpark?
tens of thousands of dollars. I would say probably half of that 73, so maybe 40-ish.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't, my opinion is like, I don't want to cut the ATA. I think there's money here. Like there's money from that we would save. And then we just dip into that, we don't have to go to 0% on the raises. We just take the rest of the money from that. And frankly, I think if Tim wants to talk to us on Saturday, do we talk about the assistant clerk not getting cut too? Like I totally agree, Matt, with what you're saying, which is it is far superior and preferred to just freeze salaries or do whatever instead of cut positions, because it is difficult to bring those back, as Jay likes to talk about when he talks about the override for the schools, right? So that's my opinion on all this.
Yep. So, I would be interested in seeing if there was appetite. This is difficult. If you-
While you're thinking, we do have 3 comments from Mr. Bruce Spinney. I'll just
All right.
read those. So is $190,000 deficit to be considered a catastrophic impact on the budget and warrant the use of emergency funding? It was not in the past. Then he said the beach has never made money. And then he said, sorry, has the beach ever produced a profit?
And it
Which is
absolutely
no.
does. With
No,
all
it's
the
a-
fucking swim. He's out of his mind.
Oh, it has?
Oh, Jonathan.
Heather,
I-
what-
I
It
thi- I-
actually, yeah, with all the
Whatever you have to do
swim
for money.
lessons, that's definitely made money, the beach.
Yeah,
That
I
was
don't,
my understanding, is that it was
Yeah.
revenue positive.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's big dollars, but that was the justification that they used to increase the programming and to bring on the position from that revolving fund, an additional position. And so the idea was that it would sort of pay for itself and that was generally revenue positive. I don't know how much they make, but their take is more than their expenses
They
by a little
support
bit.
themselves.
I think that's the message, is they support themselves. So, yeah. So I just wonder if there would be appetite, if to do those salary cuts, go down to 1% maybe, and do it on the town and school side to make that money up. And if we added that to the rec, then I think we'd be pretty close.
Matt, how do you do 1% without going into negotiations? You're talking about non-union.
It's all non-union. Yep.
How many non-unions do they have on the school department?
What did they say? 40?
Enough to make $170,000 difference if you went to 0.
Wow.
Assuming it would be half of that, it would be 85,000.
yeah, 1% and the rec money gets you to around 190.
So it's an idea. But again, I would have loved to have had this discussion before we voted last night, but I'm glad we're having it now. And I know that,
By the way, I still stand with my recommendation.
yeah, I get
Okay,
it.
all
I
right.
get it. Well, we haven't reconsidered, so as it stands, Finance Committee is recommending that plan. So, so that's.
I really
that's-
hope Tim does come on Saturday with maybe different suggestions, because back before COVID started and we were really worried about that $130,000 position, he assured us that $130,000 in a $60 million budget, it's workable. We can figure it out. So I would like to think 190,000 is also workable, and we can just not use stabilization. That's my hope. And I really hope,
Looking at this, Colleen, yeah, we can do that.
yeah.
It's just how we do it.
Yeah.
You've got to make a decision though. And, to the point earlier of, he's already cut a lot. Well, moving things to an article isn't really cutting. Again, I don't know.
Oh, you mean the equipment that got moved to
Yeah.
a special article?
I mean, have you had that discussion with the fire chief to say, look, chief, we had $102,000. Can you get by with 75 for next year? Instead of just moving the entire thing to a warrant article, have discussions with your department heads and figure out what they would do to cut their own budgets. Sufiako.
If you do talk to the fire or the police about that, they may, it's been a revolving or an ongoing project to replace their gear.
Yep.
And it could be that they could take a cut in the equipment amount for the year. And I think that's because this isn't a new program. It's an ongoing program.
Right. Go ahead, Mark.
Tim is on as an attendee. He has his hand raised, so you
Oh,
want
got
to
it.
allow him to talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see how to do that. Hang on a second.
Just while you're doing that, in the Q&A, Amy Marr, 36 Ferry, 7% of the school department, including some 40 secretaries, maintenance support, and administrative staff.
All right, Tim, you're on.
Unmute.
All right, first off, thanks for taking the call. I wasn't planning on getting listened to the rest of your discussion. So Matt, I don't know, you hit a button, got me out. So I called back and I just kind of been listening to the discussion, and I don't know, it's tough to go back and unpack everything you guys are covering, because you're talking about general fund money versus non-general fund money. The fire department has, long had, needs that we try to meet wherever we can, because we don't have enough operating revenue. That's the crux of the situation. We just don't have enough money to do everything we want to do. So we find ways to get it done. To go back to the chief and say, oh, what can you do without? We do that every day when we don't fund them with operational money. We use one-time money to do it. So you guys talked a lot of things that said, hey, hope I come back, hope I do a lot of things. And then there was some relative statements made about budgeting overall. Just, I'm here, ask away, because I'd rather not have to second guess what was said tonight when I get with you on Saturday. So maybe I'll just wait to hear more, and then I'll just raise my hand when there's a question that I need clarification on.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, Tim. I thought your intention was that you were leaving. That's all. But welcome back. So one of the things that we were discussing was, obviously your first thing to do is to try to preserve positions. So, what are the things that we can do to make up that 190 that aren't going to put positions in jeopardy?
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy over even saying this, but I'll say it again. Town and school combined, 129, I think, is the increase for the town. If we all take a zero, which my staff's not happy about, but they realize the situation we're in, that's 129. We still eliminate the EDC position. We want parity, however, so the position added, I think you were looking at a slide, Matt. that
Yes,
We might have presented to the board. So that included a new positions for the school and no increases for the leadership staff, which I think was 170 was the total. I think that's how we got to the three.
that's right. It's
300
179,
number?
954. Yep.
So that's what that is. So that's, if we were going to restore 250 because of the override, you don't give those raises, which sucks, right? I mean, this is a horrible thing, but we're in
It
a
is.
we're in a very bad spot, and I don't want to cut positions, but people are all on the municipal side are willing to do that. So let's do that. Let's all take a zero, and we'll save $300,000, and
So-
we're done.
I, go ahead, Colleen.
So, I mean, is there another alternative though? Could it possibly be, 1% and use that recreation department and that could close the 190? You okay?
Yeah, it can be a lot of combination of things, but we need to establish a baseline of equity. Is that what you would propose to update Mark Haddad's proposal to me originally from yesterday?
Yeah, so
I'm not proposing anything. I'm just trying to have a discussion and saying 0% in this environment when it's better than cutting positions, sure, but 1% is also better than cutting positions, and it seems like it's possible too.
Yeah, 1% for our folks, if you look at the wage analysis, and I know some of you guys served on the Sustainability Commission, and the numbers in terms of the percentages that we allocate for public safety are significantly lower, general government significantly lower. So, we do things as tight as we can. We have the market we don't have a lot of people making a lot of money. There are a couple of people that make a lot of money, but there are a lot of people who don't make a lot of money. So but some of those are union folks, so I'll never advocate for them because my job is to keep that cost as low as possible. But that 1% is not going to save anybody. They're certainly going to stay with us because they're loyal, dedicated employees for, in excess of 10 or 20 years in some cases. I look at someone like Paul Canoy, and it'll kill me for mentioning his name, but this guy is just a workhorse. He's now my DPW director, serves on the fire department, and I eliminated money from DPW because I could offset for his salary through the wastewater treatment facility budget, which has no tax impact. So we talk about being creative and finding ways. We do it every day, and they'll be happy to do a zero to save other people. They will do it. I just ask we do it all together and have parity. That's it.
Do you think you could possibly work with Jay tomorrow and talk about the 1% though instead? Because like you said, they do work hard. They might not be making a lot of money. And I think morale has been mentioned a couple times at other meetings. And I think 1% is better than zero. We know we have rough roads ahead, and it might be zero next year. So kind of step them down slowly rather than just cut them off this year. If we're able to do that,
Yeah, if I could, I don't want to be a nitpicker, but when we talk about the next year starts fiscal 21, July 1. When you say next year, Colleen, do you mean 22?
I mean 22. I apologize.
Okay, no, the only reason why I say it is because I look historically back at 2008, 2009, where we had a significant recession, as we all know, and we had no reductions in staff, which is amazing. It's unheard of. We didn't lose anybody. We didn't nothing. I mean, we had some attrition things happen, but we let people when we didn't rehire people. But we made it through. We bounced back. Our commercial industrial property tax base in Grafton has grown for the first time in 3 years consecutively since forever. It never has. So we're moving in the right direction to diversify that tax burden. But I need people to help us to continue down that road. So I'd be happy to work with Jay. Jay gave me a pretty good explanation of why he wanted his leadership team to continue to get 2%, and I get it. And that's why I was where I was getting 2% for our leadership team at the same time.
Sure. Tim, can we talk about the admin position a little bit that makes up the school 170? Do you know what that is specifically?
Yeah, I think it's the hiring of the new people with the money they'll get. I think that's what that is. Because they talked to you guys, what, last night or the night before, about 3 new positions, a curriculum director, someone in
so-
IT, and someone else, a total 250. So those are the positions you wouldn't fill. Or maybe you would fill, I don't know. I mean, I'm working off his budget that's online from December. So I could be wrong in terms of the basis of my assumptions, because I don't know what is new in the proposed budget from the school committee. So if I have old data, I'm gonna look like a fool, right?
Yeah, well, that's why we want to kind of reconvene. And I'll be looking at the same numbers to make sure they're updated. But I think in
So I'm gonna-
principle, finance committee would much rather see that than to go to town meeting recommending, well, I can't speak on behalf of the committee, but I would feel better with that, with some coordination. And I understand there's a, you know, that's a challenge.
Well, tell me what that is though, Matt. What
What
do you mean
is?
when you say that? When you say, I want to see that happen, I want the committee to support that, what is that? I don't know what that is. A 0 or a 1 for everybody? What?
A mix of cuts that hopefully reduce any staff elimination.
Oh, forego increases in order to keep staff.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's what we're doing at work, right? You know, at where I work, where they've gone through this progressive program of, they offered people, you know, extended leave at a discount and discounted pay, and then they cut our bonuses, and, you know, then we got rid of all of our contractors, and it was this kind of stepwise process, but all of it really, everybody understood why that was happening, because we were all pulling to try to keep each other's jobs.
Sure.
So, you know, that's the spirit of it. And finance committee doesn't want to be, you know, in the position of, you know, putting jobs at jeopardy. But at the same time, we're really, really uncomfortable with using those one-time revenues. And we just want to put ourselves in the most flexible position going into next year, into FY22.
All right. Hey, COVID's done a number on me in terms of the stress and all that stuff. So I swear we had this discussion about a 0% increase across the board that saved the 300. If we didn't, I apologize, because I was always on the assumption that we did have that discussion. If we didn't, I think that led to my confusion about how could we, in good faith, make reductions and still offer increases. That never made sense to me. So I apologize if we didn't have that discussion, because I remember it pretty clearly.
Okay, I am happy to reach out to Jay as well and give him the, we'll discuss as a committee the message that we need to deliver to Jay, but I would rather see some cuts to increases in salary rather than positions. So I'm happy to reach out and have that discussion with him, but this,
And I'll take it a step further relative to the people who are underpaid, and there's more inequities for some people than others. So like the clerk, for example, not to use a name, but it's okay. We know we've acknowledged the situation, the fundamental problem with inequity for her situation, and we can deal with that. We dealt with 3 other positions the same way on a 3-year schedule to get them adequately funded. If they have to wait another year because of COVID, they will understand.
Yep.
So we, you know, fundamentally, we have those discussions all the time. But again, we just want to find equity across the organization, not just in one place.
Tim, the one discussion I remember on raises was talk of limiting the raises for anybody who made more than 80,000 a year. That's
Yeah,
the
that was Matt's idea. Matt had that
and
great idea.
that's my one memory of wage discussion.
It was 75,000 though, because I think the philosophy.
I 80 sticks in my head, but something in that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, Matt, it was 75. We thought that was
It
an
was
adequate
75, yep.
livable wage.
yeah, we didn't
so, I mean,
want to hit the janitors, right?
So I think you're right. I think we did have the discussion, and we should stick to that. That's a great idea.
Okay, so yeah, so I'll discuss it with the, well, so what does the committee want to do about that?
I think that's a great idea to reach out to Jay. And if that's a solution to save 300, that puts us in an even better position to deal with a reduction in state aid. There's nothing to say you shouldn't come into town meeting under the levy limit.
Well,
I support that.
the raises above zero. So what's the ask here? Is it,
Zero.
it's zero. So we're saying a freeze above 75. That doesn't get us to the 300 because,
No, I'm saying zero
yep,
For everyone,
for
All-
everyone
all salaries.
to
but
get
the
to the
sli-
300,000.
yep, but the analysis was for the raises was EDC plus 0% on the town side was 129.
Yep.
On the school side, there's administrative position and there's also 0%. So it's not just raises. So I think we need to understand what that, just the raise, just the salary freeze, what that number is, what that gets us to.
If the number is zero to the schools is 170, but you're saying that's positions and zero?
Yes,
Okay, let's find out what that exact number is,
yep,
because then if you're gonna do an apples to apples, then you restore the EDC position and you keep and you don't use the $190,000,
right.
right? So let's get that exact number from the schools, because if I just understood what I heard, the 129 on the town is zero plus the EDC position.
Correct.
Okay, so let's do an apples to apples on the schools. What's zero with no new positions?
Got it.
And then have that conversation on Saturday. I know we have a hard stop right now and I actually have to go too, so I would like to see that on Saturday.
All right, go ahead, Colleen.
While you're gathering numbers, in addition to zero, can we find out what the number would be is if 75 and below still got their 2% and how that affected the numbers?
Yeah, I think what we're saying is 75 and below are at 2%. Anything
Okay.
above that is zero.
Already at zero.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right math. I don't think that's the number we based it on. Our 129 and our 170 was zero and no position. So I'll have to go back and look at the slide, but I think it's zero. And Matt, I'm gonna hurt myself here negotiating with people. The people those people who are in unions, the ones you're worried about. So they wouldn't be impacted by this decision. Can I say it like that? You understand what I'm saying?
You have contracts with them, you'd have to open them to get down to zero, so.
Yeah, but I'm not proposing that.
No, we're not
So
asking.
these are
you to do that.
non, I know, Matt wants to do 75 and below, take a zero in order to take a 2% in order not to hurt the janitor. The janitor is not.
I see. I see what you're saying.
Is a union employee. I'm sorry, is a union employee. So I don't want you to, those people are they're still under a bargaining unit.
Got it. Okay.
The downside of this is this happens without COVID. And this is kind of our practice. If it becomes that, it incentivizes people to unionize, which we don't want to do that either. But in full disclosure, you got to manage from all sides of this. But right now, just the people who are non-unionized in my group, no increase and no position for EDC, which is unfortunate. It's $129,000.
Yep.
So let's
So-
get the corresponding number on the school side.
Yeah, that's the way to go. All right. Very good. Okay, I think we should, we're doing pretty good. So there's a couple of outstanding items, and we just have a few minutes. Irene, I can hand it over to you if you want to keep the meeting going. What we have to do to kind of get where we need to get for Monday is we've got to review our recommendations. We've got to vote on just the two budget articles. And then we've got to review the state of the town. So I have started the state of the town message, but part of that document depends on what we end up going to town meeting with, frankly. So it's not done yet.
The only thing I think we can continue to do tonight, if we want to continue versus hard stop, would be on Saturday. Tonight, we can review the recommendations, but we can't vote on the budget articles till we have the further discussions.
Right.
But that's not going to happen tonight. And then, like you said, your state of the town is going to depend on what we ultimately do. So I'm more than happy to go through the recommendations if we feel we want to review those. That's fine.
So
If everybody wants to say, let's just wait till Saturday, I'm open. I'm
I
not
have
going
to go. I have to go at 7, so I'm not
As
sure
do
you're gonna
I.
have quorum.
Yeah, I gotta go too.
all right, so it sounds like we are ready to adjourn.
to adjourn till Saturday.
Yep.
Move to adjourn.
Robin, aye.
McHugh, aye.
Yeah, that I.
Roy, aye.
Once and I.
Will I?
Fisher, aye.
All right. Tim, I'll send you the invites for Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it.
And
Appreciate it, guys. Good work.
Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.